Good morning. Welcome to the last briefing of this term of the EPP. Today with us is the chairman, Manfred Weber, and Spitzenkandidatin of the EPP. And we will open to your questions after his statement.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your interest and for being with us in the last plenary session in this term. You can imagine for all the MEPs, it's a special week where we are running now for the next European Parliament, where we will go out in the constituencies to speak with our voters to try to convince. So it's really a special week. It's great to have you all with us. Especially today, I think we as Europeans, we feel broken-hearted this morning after the tragic event yesterday in Paris. Notre Dame as a symbol for the French people and also for the Europeans. We feel really that this is a truly devastating situation for all of us. I want to express my solidarity with the French people and especially also with the Paris firefighters who did a great job yesterday to secure a few parts of Notre Dame yesterday. I also want to underline that Notre Dame is not only for the French people a key building, it's also for us as Europeans a symbol of our history and gives us also an idea about our identity. And I think that's important to have this in mind. And that's why everybody will be on the side of the French people and on the French state to rebuild Notre Dame afterwards. And we as Europeans, we should practically try to help our French friends. Again, today we are again in this week, in the last plenary week before the elections. The last 5 years, the last 10 years, I may say, were occupied in the European debate mainly about crisis management. It was 10 years ago the Euro crisis. It was 4 years ago the migration crisis. It was 3 years ago now, the Brexit crisis. So we were occupied by a lot of crisis management things, but not so much about future orientation. And that's why I think it's extremely important to show people that now we are ready as the next European Parliament, as the next European Commission. We are ready to start to open a new chapter, to start a new period for Europe, where we are trying to create optimism and positive, forward-looking ideas for the future of the European Union. That is what we want to do as EPP, and I want to mention a few of these things, especially as EPP. You know, when we are doing campaign now, we are not doing it in a way that from now on everything is new, because we are always built on what our predecessors did. So Jean-Claude Juncker is an EPP Commission President, and we managed together the last 5 years in the development of Europe. And that's why when we do campaign as EPP, we always base our campaign on what was achieved in the last 5 years. And that is especially in 3 items and 3 fields important. One field is the security. I want to remind you that we have established a very strong PNR directive for Europe. We have an anti-terrorism directive installed. We have rules for terrorist content in online formats. We have stricter rules on financing of terrorism. So a lot of very concrete issues were established and managed in the last 5 years. Especially a few months ago, we guaranteed the full interoperability of all the European databases of Eurodac, SIS and VIS. So there is a lot of progress going on when it is about more security for our citizens. And I want to build up on this concrete achievements in the last 5 years. I want to build up the proposals of the EPP for the future. So I think that in the data exchange field, we need a mandatory exchange of informations. It cannot be the case anymore that the states decide what they include in the databases. We have to have a mandatory exchange. We need to upgrade Europol to a real European FBI. We have to install a European cyber brigade, which has the task to defend in the future the European digital infrastructure. So again, building up on what was achieved, there are new plans, new positive forward-looking plans on the table. A second big field of engagement, of work, was for sure the migration field. I think we also managed in the Jean-Claude Juncker period of leadership a lot of positive things. More than 700,000 people were rescued in the sea. We have a significant reduction of the smugglers' activity, especially in the EU-Turkish area on the border between Greece and Turkey. So we have a lot of positive developments, but not yet everything is solved. That's why I want to go further. I think that the 10,000 Frontex officers, which are now agreed among the institutions in Europe, must be established much more faster than it is planned today. At the moment, we plan it for 2027, and I think it's the absolute need to install them already in the year 2022. So we have to speed up with all our activities on the external border. I think to make a Marshall Plan for Africa really powerful, I think a new commissioner, especially for Africa, so a commissioner which has a task to deal with Africa and the different kind of activities, trade, migration, environmental issues, all the developments in Africa should be combined in one hand. That's why the idea to install a special commissioner for Africa can be one of the options. I think we have to work on readmission agreements, because in the past we had the need to secure our borders, but today we have the need also to send those back who have not the right to stay, who are not asylum seekers, who are not refugees. That's why readmission agreements are crucial, and a real resettlement program for Europe, an ambitious real resettlement program for Europe, where we show that Europe is still ready to help people who need our help. But the state must decide together with the United Nations, and not the smugglers decide who is arriving. And the third point, I spoke about security, I spoke about migration. And the third big field of engagement, which we want to prioritize all in the campaign, is still the question of economic development and jobs. We have created in the last 10 years more than 12 million jobs. You're aware about the figures. The employment level is as high as it has even been with 240 million people in employment in today's European Union. So we have a very high level of employment, and the lowest unemployment rate, about 6.5%. So that is a result of the last years, and I think we as EPP can stand in front of people and can tell people that our management of the crisis, of the euro crisis, was a positive one. But now we have to go further. That's why my party is strongly in favor of the trade agreements. You know that the trade talks with America are one of the most important partners for us, are on the table. My party voted here in the House in favor of the trade talks with America. We have to do more on research combined with the environmental issues. So Greta Thunberg is today in the European Parliament. It's great to have her here. It's great to see that a lot of young people are engaged in fight against climate change. And that's why research is our key answer in answering also the climate change question. And I also want to underline the clear commitment towards the regional policy. We have to stick to our poorest regions in Europe to give them also a perspective. So the idea was to use today's press conference also to give you a short outlook about the priorities of the EPP for the campaign. We will start next Tuesday in Athens, our EPP Hot Face campaign. You know, I was already traveling around Europe in the last month as in a so-called listening tour, but next Tuesday we will start in Athens our hot phase of the campaign, and then we will try to convince as many as possible of the voters in Europe to vote for EPP. Thank you so much.
We'll now take your questions. Jurek, the first, Griselda after.
Jurek Kuczewicz from the newspaper Le Soir. Hello, Mr. Weber, I'm here. Regarding the Brexit debate, President Tusk, in his conclusion, told Mr. Verhofstadt that he was warmly applauded by Mr. Farage, and this tells something. But you also applauded Mr. Verhofstadt, and we know that it seems that you were not very EPP group, and you were not very much in favor of a long extension. And the question is, what do you say about this? And also particularly because at the European Council, the majority of the EPP leaders were very much in favor of this longer extension. So is there a difference of logic, a difference of interest? How would you explain this very significant difference of point of view between the leaders, the EPP leaders, and the party or the group?
Well, we have in all the parties, in all the formats between the institutions. So last week our EPP summit, for example, where we met with, as parliamentarian leaders with our council members. We have in all these formats a lot of discussions going on how we manage the Brexit development. And let me be clear. I think last week there was one big thing that we kept the unity after intensive talks between Parliament and Council, between different leaders inside of the Council. We kept the idea of a unified position of the European Union. To keep the 27 together is a big thing, is positive. And the second positive thing is that a hard Brexit, having the Irish problems in mind and also other problems in mind, was avoided. So that are two positive things. On the other hand, I must underline again that I cannot easily explain to the citizens of Europe that a country who is officially leaving the European Union will have a big say in the future of the European Union. And the European Parliament is a huge institution which will decide on the future of Europe, and it is about the Commission President, about the mandate, what do we want to achieve in the next 5 years. And having this in mind, let me say I was also among those who were very skeptical on this long-term prolongation. Again, I see both sides. On the one hand, the cliff edge, the question to avoid a development which nobody wants to see with a hard Brexit. So this was avoided. But I would really ask all the other institutions to face all of the problems we have in the European Parliament. So there was a lot of discussion going on about how the British members in the Council will behave in the next year, in the next month, about this gentleman behavior. Even it was even included inside of the Council text. But there was not so much recognition and debate about what does this mean for the European Parliament. And that is the only point I want to underline. And there I think Guy Verhofstadt was right. Even Gabi Zimmer mentioned this today in the debate. I think to take care about our institution is a job of members of the European Parliament. And don't get me wrong, for the moment the Brits are members of the European Union, and that means they have the full right to participate in the vote. So nobody in the EPP is complaining about this. It's only a question about principle behind whether a country who is leaving can have an influence about the future. So still a few percentages of hope are still on the table that they can clarify things before the election. So let's see.
Griselda Pastor de la radio espagnole SER. Sur le Brexit, de votre point de vue, si le Royaume-Uni va aux élections européennes, ils vont rester pour toujours, c'est-à-dire c'est l'idée de que on est face à un deuxième référendum. Et après, j'aimerais savoir sur le parti d'ultra-droite, on avait en Finlande le premier examen après 4 ans de gouvernement, d'un gouvernement entre partis de droite, le vôtre entre autres, et la droite populiste. Et le résultat est plutôt beau pour les populistes parce qu'ils sont là où ils étaient, malgré que votre formation croyait les avoir domestiqués, disons comme ça. Est-ce que vous craignez un scénario pareil pour les élections européennes? Qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire? Il faut les isoler ou il faut les intégrer dans le gouvernement, ces partis-là?
So on the first question again on Brexit, I think position is clear, and the members who will be elected on the 23rd of May towards European Parliament will be here in the Parliament until the Brits will formally leave the European Union. So that is the legal situation. And on the question what will happen, so may I tell you that I'm concerned. And I want to tell as a campaigner, as somebody who is looking for support, as somebody who has a mandate from a party to run for the European posts, for one of these posts, I must tell you that the people in Europe will decide in these elections this year whether we will keep the idea of compromise, of togetherness, readiness to get a common understanding and get a common, let me say, idea for the future, or whether we will fall back in egoism and even nationalism. That is the question on the table. And I don't judge. I only propose what I believe in. because I'm a candidate. I want to convince people, and that's why I present what I, as a candidate, believe in. And I believe deeply in strong nations, because you must have a strong Spanish position. You must have a strong Finnish or Italian position. But finally, you arrive here in Straßburg or in Brussels or in Luxembourg in the formats of the European Union with your strong national position, and you find a compromise. The essence of Europe is the will to find a compromise. And this essence, this key point for the future of Europe, has to be decided by the voters of the European Union. Do we fall back in nationalism and egoism, or do we want to compromise in the future? That is a question on the table. And having in mind what the right populists are telling us, you see there is Salvini in Italy who is asking in the economic field for more solidarity, and then he is doing a common statement, he is organizing a common statement with the German AfD, the party in Germany who is the most prominent party refusing all kinds of solidarity in Europe. That's nonsense. That's purely nonsense. Or when we speak about the question how Europe should behave towards our partners in the East, towards Russia, which have obviously an aggressive behavior, then Salvini is the biggest friend of Vladimir Putin, and Kaczynski is the biggest, let me say, I wouldn't call it enemy, but opponent to Vladimir Putin. So that is the model which right populists and extremists are offering to the Europeans. That means egoism, but no European answers anymore. That is the option on the table. And that's why my party, I myself, will fight with all my capacity, with all my will, with all my arguments I have, to look for people to vote for stability in the center of the political landscape. That is what I will do. And that gives you also a clear indication what I will also afterwards to ask for. Having in mind that the next European Parliament, nobody can predict it, the people have the say. But the next European Parliament has to do its best to bring the pro-compromise forces, I wouldn't call them pro-Europe, but pro-compromise forces, to bring the pro-compromise forces together to establish a parliamentarian structure where we'll keep this idea of readiness, of working together alive. That is what is at stake. And I'm clearly committed. I did it always as a member of the European Parliament. I fought always in my party for this approach, and I will continue to do so.
I have a question here.
Good morning. My name is Katalin Zöltegyi. I'm from Hungarian News Television. As next President of the European Commission, what would be your first priorities regarding tackling migration?
Well, the migration question is for sure one of the political open wounds of today's European discourse, this debate. That's why the start of a new mandate can also give us the chance to try it again to solve the question. There was already a lot of engagement, but I think after the European elections, having in mind what the people told us, what is the new composition of the European Parliament, everybody must sit together, must use this momentum of a fresh start, of a new chapter, to give an answer on migration. And that is what I want to do. I want to upgrade this. It will be my personal task afterwards to sit together with the leaders from the parties and also from the states to find a common understanding. After 3 years, 3.5 years, close to 4 years of discussion on the migration issue, we discussed it really a lot. So there is no debate anymore, no need anymore on further debates. Now it's time to act and to decide, and that is what we will do afterwards.
Thank you very much. I know you have more questions, but our Green colleagues are here, so we need to leave the room. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.